But as Alexander's cavalry thundered across the plain in pursuit of the fleeing Persians, a message tore through the chaos like a blade of ice. Parmenion was collapsing on the left. His men were being swallowed by a wave of Scythian and Indian horsemen. Crushed beneath a storm they could no longer hold back. Even worse, a gap had opened in the Greek line, and enemy riders were flooding through. Alexander felt the pull of two destinies Darius within reach ahead of him, and his own army on the brink of destruction behind. The choice was agony, but a king cannot chase glory while his men die. With a curse, he wheeled his horse around, abandoning the chance to end the Persian Empire in a single stroke, and tore back across the field like a thunderbolt. What awaited him was carnage. The air was a choking cloud of dust and screams, the ground slick with blood and trampled bodies. Alexander smashed into the Persian cavalry with such ferocity that even veteran horsemen recoiled. Companions fell beside him, cut from their saddles, crushed under hooves, pierced by spears, but they did not break. Inch by inch, they drove the enemy back, until the last line of Persian resistance cracked. As word spread that Darius had fled the field, panic rippled outward, and the great army that once shook the world dissolved into a frantic, desperate rout. Gaugamela was over. It was not just a victory, it was annihilation. A battle that should have ended Macedonia instead shattered the Persian world forever. Alexander surveyed the field, the bodies, the shattered chariots, the twisted armor. He had won an empire in a single day, but at a cost he could feel in the hollow ache of loss behind his ribs. Now the road to Babylon lay open, the beating heart of Persia. When Alexander entered the ancient city, it was not as a conqueror drenched in blood, but as a king welcomed with awe. The gates opened, crowds bowed, temples lit fires in his honor. Its officials, keepers of traditions older than Greece itself, recognized him as the rightful ruler. They spoke his name with the same reverence once reserved for Darius. And then came Susa, the treasury of kings, where gold glittered like trapped sunlight. Alexander woke to the royal throne of Persia, sat upon it, and for the first time truly felt the weight of the world settling on his shoulders. He was no longer simply the king of Macedonia, he was now heir to Cyrus, ruler of nations stretching from Egypt to the edge of India. But Persia had one last defiant ember left to burn. In the Zagros Mountains, at a narrow pass later known as the Persian Gates, a force of Persian warriors stood like a wall of iron. They fought with a ferocity that stunned the Macedonians, blocking every advance, hurling back assault after assault. The pass became a tomb of mangled corpses and frozen breath. Alexander's army stalled for a month, infuriated and bleeding men on rocks soaked with snow and blood. But mountains can hide secrets, and when the Greeks discovered a path that wound above and behind the defenders, they swept down like a storm. The Persians were trapped, surrounded, and slaughtered to the last man. The gate had fallen. Persia lay exposed. In early 330 BC, Alexander reached the jewel of the empire, the ceremonial capital, Persepolis. Its columns soared like stone giants. Its palaces glittered with sapphire and gold. Here, Alexander hesitated. He wanted to be Darius' successor, a king welcomed, not feared. But the memory of Athens inflames the temples burned by Xerxes. A century before still burned in every Greek heart. In a moment that would echo through history, Alexander ordered the city sacked and set ablaze. Flames devoured halls of kings. Smoke rose into the night like a funeral pyre for the Persian Empire itself. Only one shadow remained: Darius. The fugitive king fled north to Media, to the royal city of Ecbatana, hoping to gather another army. Alexander pursued relentlessly, determined to seize the man who had once commanded the mightiest empire on earth. But as the great chase carved through plains and deserts, Darius' own satrap, Bessus, betrayed him. The fallen king was found dying in the dust, abandoned, stabbed, and left for Alexander to discover not as a rival, but as a broken man whose empire had dissolved beneath his feet. Alexander bowed beside him, ordering that Darius be buried with royal honors among his ancestors in Persepolis. The conqueror who sought to defeat him instead became the man who gave him his final dignity. Then, rising from the tombs of kings, Alexander turned east again. There was no hesitation, no slowing, no fear. He would hunt Bessus. He would subdue the far-flung provinces of Parthia, Bactria, and Sogdia. He would push to the edge of maps and beyond, into lands where the world dissolved into myth. And he would not stop until he stood at the very ends of the earth.